Amara Okafor's eyes fluttered open in the darkness of the hospital room, her body perfectly still beneath the crisp white sheets. Through the narrow slits of her eyelids, she watched her husband of 12 years lean closer to her bedside, his phone pressed against his ear. What she heard in the next 60 seconds would shatter everything she thought she knew about the man she loved. "She's still unconscious," Chaik said, his voice cold and detached. "The doctors say it could be weeks before she wakes up." "If she wakes up..." Amara's heart hammered against her ribs, but years of discipline kept her breathing steady and slow. The car accident 3 days ago had been terrifying, the Mercedes spinning out of control on the rain-slicked highway outside Lagos. She'd suffered a severe concussion, broken ribs, and countless bruises, but her mind had cleared that morning. She'd been about to call for the nurse when she heard Chaik enter the room. Now, every instinct screamed at her to remain silent. No one suspects anything," Chaik continued, pacing to the window. "The brake failure looks completely accidental. Even the police closed the investigation." "Brake failure? Accidental?" The words echoed in Amara's mind like thunder. Her fingers wanted to clench, her eyes wanted to fly open, but she forced herself to stay motionless, a statue carved from shock and disbelief. Amara Okafor wasn't just any woman lying in that hospital bed. At 42, she was one of the most powerful business figures in West Africa, the CEO of Okafor Industries, a manufacturing empire worth over $3 billion. She'd built it from the ground up after her father's modest textile business nearly collapsed, transforming it into a conglomerate that employed 15,000 people across 6 countries. Forbes had called her the Iron Queen of Lagos. Financial Times had featured her on their cover. She dined with presidents and philanthropists, negotiated deals in 3 languages, and never, not once, imagined that her greatest threat would come from inside her own home. Chaik Okafor, her husband, had been her college sweetheart. They'd met at the University of Lagos 20 years ago, 2 ambitious students dreaming of changing the world. He'd supported her through the grueling early years of expanding her father's business, held her hand through miscarriages and setbacks, stood beside her at every ribbon-cutting and board meeting. Or so she'd thought. "Just keep everything ready," Chaik said into the phone, his tone businesslike. "Once the will is read and the assets transfer, we can move forward with the plan. Patience, my love. We've waited this long. My love." He wasn't talking to a business partner or lawyer. The endearment dripped with an intimacy that made Amara's stomach turn. She thought of their bedroom at the estate in Ikoyi, the king-sized bed they'd shared just 4 nights ago, the anniversary dinner they'd planned for next month. 20 years together. 12 years married. All of it, apparently, a carefully constructed lie. "I have to go," Chaik said abruptly. Her sister just walked into the corridor. "Yes, Zainab. She's been here every day, hovering like a vulture." "No, she doesn't know anything." "No one does." The call ended. Amara heard his footsteps approach the bed, felt his presence looming over her. A hand touched her forehead, gentle and warm, the same hand that had held hers during their wedding vows, that had wiped away her tears when they'd lost their first baby, that had apparently also sabotaged her car. "Rest well, my dear," Chaik whispered, his lips brushing her temple. "Everything will be over soon." The door opened, and Amara heard her younger sister Zainab's voice, tight with worry. "Any change?" "Nothing," Chaik replied, his voice perfectly modulated with grief and concern. "The doctors say we just have to wait and pray." "She's the strongest person I know," Zainab said fiercely. "She'll fight through this. Amara always fights." "I know," Chaik said softly. "That's what I'm counting on." The double meaning wasn't lost on Amara. As the siblings talked in hushed tones near the door, she lay motionless in the bed, her mind racing through possibilities and plans. She was alive. She was aware. And now she knew the truth. Her husband wanted her dead, had tried to kill her, and was waiting for her to die so he could claim her empire. But Amara Okafor hadn't built a billion-dollar empire by giving up when things got difficult. She'd built it by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than everyone who'd underestimated her. Chaik had made a fatal mistake. He'd failed to finish what he started. And now, the Iron Queen of Lagos was about to remind him exactly why she'd earned that name. The game had changed. The players were revealed. And Amara would make sure that before this was over, everyone would know the true cost of betrayal. The story just began. Subscribe now to enjoying more powerful story on our channel. For 3 more days, Amara remained perfectly still, her eyes closed, her breathing measured, while the world spun around her hospital bed. Nurses checked her vitals every 4 hours. Doctors discussed her prognosis in clinical terms at the foot of her bed, as if she were already gone. Visitors came and went, their voices blending into a symphony of concern and false sympathy. But Amara listened to everything, cataloging every word, every tone, every slip of the tongue that might reveal the full scope of the conspiracy against her. Chaik came twice daily, always alone, always impeccably dressed in his tailored suits. To the medical staff, he was the devoted husband, dark circles under his eyes from sleepless nights, his voice cracking with emotion when he spoke to the doctors. But when the room emptied and he thought they were alone, his mask slipped. He made phone calls, checked his watch obsessively, and once, she heard him laugh softly, a sound devoid of warmth. 2 more weeks, he'd murmured to someone on the phone. The lawyer said that's the standard waiting period before we can begin the process. After that, with her incapacitated, I'll have full power of attorney over everything. Amara's mind worked like the calculating machine it had always been. Power of attorney. He'd been planning this for months, maybe years. She thought back to 6 months ago when Chaik had suggested they update their estate documents, hire a new lawyer, someone he knew from his university days. She'd been too busy with the expansion into Ghana to pay attention to the details. She'd signed where he'd indicated, trusting him completely. What a fool she'd been. Her sister Zainab visited every evening after work, sitting beside the bed and talking about everything and nothing. Zainab worked as a prosecutor in Lagos, sharp-minded and relentless in court, but she had no idea that her brother-in-law was a would-be murderer. On the 4th evening, Zainab brought someone unexpected. "Mama Efua wanted to see you," Zainab said softly, and Amara recognized the name immediately. Mama Efua was the elderly woman who'd worked as their family's housekeeper for 35 years, who'd practically raised both Amara and Zainab after their mother died. She'd retired 5 years ago to a comfortable house Amara had bought for her in Lekki, but the sisters still visited her regularly. "My child," Mama Efua's weathered voice filled the room, and Amara felt the old woman's calloused hand clasp hers. "I told you, didn't I? 2 years ago at Christmas, I told you to watch that husband of yours. But you wouldn't listen." Zainab made a dismissive sound. "Mama, not now. Chaik has been devoted through all of this." "Devoted like a snake is devoted to the mouse it's swallowing," Mama Efua said sharply. "I saw the way he looked at that woman at the New Year's party. The one with the long braids and the expensive perfume. A man doesn't look at a woman like that unless there's sin between them." Amara's mind raced. New Year's party. They'd hosted over 200 guests at their Ikoyi estate to celebrate the start of the year. She tried to remember anyone fitting that description, but the evening had been a blur of business contacts and social obligations. She'd been focused on securing a partnership with a South African mining company, not on watching her husband's wandering eyes. "You see evil everywhere, Mama," Zainab said gently, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. "I see what I see," the old woman insisted. "And I see a man who smiles with his mouth but not his eyes. Mark my words, when Amara wakes up, she'll need to look closely at the people around her. Not everyone who prays for your recovery wants you to recover." The words hung in the air like prophecy. Mama Efua squeezed Amara's hand once more and then released it. "I'll pray for you, my daughter. You're stronger than they think. You always have been." After they left, Amara lay in the darkness, processing everything. A woman with long braids and expensive perfume. The "my love," Chaik had called someone on the phone. It wasn't just about money then. There was another woman, someone he wanted to be with, someone who was waiting for Amara to die so they could step into her life, her home, her position. The next morning, Dr. Adeyemi, her primary physician, came in earlier than usual. He was a man in his 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes, someone Amara had known professionally for years. He'd treated her father before he died. "Any changes?" he asked the nurse. "None, doctor." Vitals are stable, but there's still no sign of consciousness. Dr. Adeyemi approached the bed and shone a light in Amara's eyes. She'd learned to keep her pupils from reacting, a trick of focused meditation and sheer willpower. He checked her reflexes, made notes on his tablet, and sighed deeply. "I've seen cases like this before," he said to the nurse. "The body heals, but the mind stays locked away. Sometimes it's the trauma. Sometimes it's something else entirely. The brain is protecting itself from something it's not ready to face." If only he knew how true that was, Amara thought. Her brain was indeed protecting her, but not from the accident. From the truth she'd discovered and the dangerous game she was now playing. "Her husband wants to discuss long-term care options," Dr. Adeyemi continued. "He mentioned a facility in Switzerland. Very expensive, very exclusive." Switzerland? Of course. Chaik would want her far away, isolated, where he could control the narrative and the medical decisions. Where he could ensure she never woke up to expose him. "That seems premature," the nurse said carefully. "It's only been a week." "I agree," Dr. Adeyemi said. "I told him we should wait at least another month before making such decisions. But he was quite insistent. He even asked about the legal process for making medical decisions on her behalf." The pieces were falling into place. Chaik wasn't just waiting for her to die. He was preparing to move her somewhere he could control completely, somewhere her family couldn't easily visit, where he could slowly let her fade away while he consolidated control of her empire. Amara had built Okafor Industries through strategy and patience. She'd learned from her father that the best businesspeople weren't the ones who acted rashly, but the ones who waited for the perfect moment to strike. This situation was no different. She needed more information. She needed to know everyone involved, understand the complete scope of the conspiracy, and gather evidence that would stand up in court. Because when she opened her eyes, when she finally revealed that she'd been conscious all along, she would need to strike hard and fast. Chaik would have no second chances to finish what he'd started. That afternoon, she heard voices in the hallway, one of them Chaik's. But the other voice made her blood run cold. "We can't keep meeting here," the woman's voice said, low and urgent. "People will start to notice." "Let them notice," Chaik replied. "In a few weeks, it won't matter. You'll be the new Mrs. Okafor, and everyone will accept it. A grieving widower finding comfort and moving on. It's a tale as old as time." The new Mrs. Okafor. The words burned through Amara like acid. She forced herself to remain calm, to keep breathing steadily, even as rage and heartbreak warred inside her chest. "What about her sister?" the woman asked. "Zainab doesn't trust me." "Zainab doesn't matter," Chaik said dismissively. "She's a prosecutor, not a detective. And she has no idea about the updated will or the power of attorney. By the time she figures anything out, it'll be too late." Their footsteps faded down the corridor, but Amara had heard enough. The conspiracy was deeper than she'd thought, and time was running out. She had to wake up soon. But not yet. Not until she had everything she needed to destroy them completely. On the 8th day, Amara made her first move. It was small, calculated, and designed to test the waters without revealing her full consciousness. When the morning nurse came to check her vitals, Amara allowed her fingers to twitch slightly, a barely perceptible movement that could be dismissed as an involuntary reflex. The nurse gasped softly and immediately pressed the call button. Within minutes, Dr. Adeyemi was in the room, along with 2 other specialists. They examined her thoroughly, shining lights in her eyes, testing her reflexes, speaking her name with increasing urgency. "Mrs. Okafor, if you can hear me, try to squeeze my hand," Dr. Adeyemi said, placing his palm against hers. Amara gave the faintest pressure, just enough to register but not enough to suggest full awareness. She needed them to believe she was emerging slowly from the coma, not that she'd been conscious and listening for over a week. "Call her husband immediately," Dr. Adeyemi instructed. "This is a very positive sign. She may be starting to wake up." 20 minutes later, Chaik burst into the room, his face a perfect mask of hope and concern. Behind him came someone Amara hadn't expected to see, her business partner and CFO, Marcus Obi. Marcus was 45, brilliant with numbers, and had been with Okafor Industries for 8 years. She trusted him with the company's financial secrets, relied on his counsel for major decisions, and considered him one of her few true allies in the cutthroat world of African business. "Thank God," Chaik said, reaching for her hand. His touch made her skin crawl, but she remained limp, unresponsive. "How long before she's fully conscious?" "It's impossible to say," Dr. Adeyemi replied. "Recovery from this type of trauma is unpredictable. Could be hours, days, or weeks. But this is definitely progress." Marcus stood near the foot of the bed, his expression unreadable. "Should we notify the board of directors?" he asked quietly. "They've been asking for updates. The company needs leadership, and there are several time-sensitive decisions pending." "Not yet," Chaik said quickly, too quickly. "Let's wait until she's fully awake and can resume her duties. We don't want to alarm the shareholders or create instability in the market. I can continue to handle things in the interim." Amara's eyes remained closed, but her mind was screaming. Chaik had no official role in Okafor Industries. He'd always claimed he preferred to focus on his consulting work, advising tech startups and staying out of her business affairs. But now he was positioning himself as the interim leader? With what authority? "Actually," Marcus said carefully, "I've been reviewing the corporate documents, and there's some confusion about the succession plan. The board asked me to clarify who has decision-making authority in the event of your wife's incapacitation." There was a long pause. Amara could feel the tension crackling in the air between the two men. "I have power of attorney," Chaik said finally. "The documents were updated 6 months ago. Everything is in order." "Of course," Marcus replied, his tone neutral. "I'll need to see those documents for the board's records. Standard procedure. I'll have my lawyer send them over." "Your lawyer?" Marcus's voice sharpened slightly. "I thought Mrs. Okafor used Adebayo and Associates for all corporate and personal legal matters." "We switched firms," Chaik said smoothly. "My old classmate Tunbekar handles our personal affairs now. Much more efficient." Amara wanted to scream. Tunbekar. She'd met him once at a dinner party, a slick lawyer with expensive taste and questionable ethics. Chaik had pushed hard for the switch, claiming Adebayo was too old-fashioned, too slow. She'd agreed because she'd been focused on the Ghana expansion, because she trusted her husband, because she'd been blind. After Marcus left, Chaik remained at her bedside. He pulled a chair close and sat down, taking her hand again. To anyone watching through the glass window, he was the picture of a devoted husband keeping vigil. But his next words, whispered so softly that only she could hear, revealed the monster beneath the mask. "I know you're in there somewhere, Amara," he said conversationally. "Maybe you can hear me, maybe you can't. But just in case you can, I want you to understand something. This isn't personal. It's business. You were always so much better at business than at reading people. That was your weakness." He paused, stroking her hand with his thumb, a gesture that had once been loving and was now purely sinister. "I gave you 12 years, he continued. 12 years of playing the supportive husband, attending your boring corporate events, smiling for the cameras while you built your empire. Do you know how exhausting that was? Watching you sign deals worth millions while I had to pretend I was satisfied with my little consulting gigs? I'm just as smart as you are, Amara. Smarter even. But I was born poor, born without connections, without a textile factory to inherit and transform. You had advantages you never even acknowledged." Amara's heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could see it through the hospital gown, but she kept her breathing steady, her face slack. "Nkechi understands me," Chaik said, and finally Amara had a name for the other woman. "She appreciates what I bring to the table. She doesn't treat me like an accessory to her success. And when we're married, when I'm running Okafor Industries with her by my side, we'll show everyone what real power looks like." He stood up, releasing her hand. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to slip away quietly, either here or in that nice facility in Switzerland. The doctors will say it was complications from the accident, that your brain suffered more damage than they initially thought. Tragic, but these things happen. And I'll mourn you publicly, very convincingly, while privately celebrating my freedom and my fortune. Your sister will suspect nothing. Your precious board will accept me as your grieving widower, and life will go on. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, a mockery of tenderness. Goodbye, my dear wife. Thank you for everything. As soon as he left the room, Amara allowed herself one single tear to slide down her cheek. Not from sadness, though her heart was breaking. Not from fear, though the danger was very real. But from rage, pure and incandescent, at the betrayal and the years of deception. That evening, Zainab came alone. She sat beside the bed and took Amara's hand, and for a long moment, she was silent. Then she spoke, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know if you can hear me, big sister, but I need to tell you something. I've been doing some digging. Quiet digging, nothing official, just asking questions here and there. And something doesn't feel right about your accident. Amara's pulse quickened, but she kept her eyes closed. The police report says brake failure, but I spoke to the mechanic who services your cars. He said he checked that Mercedes 2 days before your accident. Everything was perfect. And the wreck was destroyed in the impound fire last week, very conveniently, before any independent investigation could be done. There was a pause. Amara heard papers rustling. I also found something interesting, Zainab continued. Remember how Chaik said he was in Abuja the day of your accident, at that tech conference? There's no record of him attending any conference in Abuja that week. His name isn't on any attendance list, any hotel registry, nothing. He lied about where he was. Amara's sister, the prosecutor, was already building a case. Hope flickered in Amara's chest. I can't prove anything yet, Zainab said quietly. But I'm watching him. If Chaik had anything to do with this, if he hurt you intentionally, I will make sure he pays for it. I promise you that. She squeezed Amara's hand hard, and this time, Amara squeezed back, just a little, just enough. Zainab gasped. Amara? Can you hear me? Squeeze again if you can hear me. Amara squeezed once more, deliberately, and heard her sister's sharp intake of breath. Oh, thank God, Zainab whispered. You're in there. You're fighting. That's my sister. You keep fighting, you hear me? Keep fighting and I'll keep digging. We'll get through this together. After Zainab left to find Dr. Adeyemi, Amara lay in the darkness, her mind racing through possibilities. Her sister was on the right track, but she didn't have enough yet. She needed evidence, concrete proof of Chaik's involvement in the accident and his plans for the company. She needed to know everyone who was part of the conspiracy, not just Chaik and this woman Kechi. And most importantly, she needed to stay hidden just a little longer, until all the pieces were in place. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And Amara Okafor had never lost a game that mattered. By the 10th day, Amara had become a master of deception. She allowed small signs of improvement, enough to keep hope alive but not enough to suggest full consciousness. A finger twitch here, a flutter of eyelids there, subtle movements that kept the medical staff optimistic while buying her precious time to gather information. Dr. Adeyemi increased his monitoring, ordering new scans and tests. Each procedure gave Amara an opportunity to listen to conversations between staff members, to hear gossip and observations that painted a fuller picture of what was happening beyond her hospital room door. It was during one of these tests that she overheard 2 nurses talking in the hallway outside the MRI suite. "Did you see that woman who was here yesterday?" the younger nurse asked. "The one with the long braids and the designer handbag? She was with Mr. Okafor." "His sister," he said. The older nurse replied, skepticism heavy in her voice. "That was no sister. I saw how she touched his arm, how they stood close together. And the perfume she wore, you could smell it all down the corridor. Very expensive, very distinctive. Maybe she's a friend helping him through this difficult time," the younger nurse suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. "Friends don't look at each other like that," the older nurse said firmly. "I've been working in this hospital for 23 years. I know the difference between friendship and something else. That man's wife is lying in there fighting for her life, and he's entertaining other women. It's disgraceful." So Nkechi had been bold enough to visit the hospital. Amara filed away this information, adding it to the growing mental dossier she was building. The woman was confident, perhaps too confident. That could be useful. That afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Amara recognized his voice immediately. Chief Emeka Adeola, one of the senior members of the Okafor Industries Board of Directors. He was 72 years old, a titan of Nigerian business who'd known Amara's father and had been instrumental in helping her secure her first major contracts 15 years ago. "I came as soon as I heard she was showing signs of improvement," Chief Adeola said to someone outside the room, probably Dr. Adeyemi. "How is she truly?" "Making progress, but it's slow," the doctor replied. "These things take time." "And her husband? How is he managing?" There was a pause before Dr. Adeyemi answered. "He seems very concerned, naturally. Though I must admit, some of his questions have been unusual." "Unusual how?" "He's very focused on the legal aspects. Power of attorney, medical decision-making authority, that sort of thing. I understand the need to prepare for various scenarios, but the urgency seems premature given that she's showing improvement." "I see," Chief Adeola said, his tone thoughtful. "And has he discussed moving her to another facility?" "He mentioned Switzerland. I advised against it at this stage." Chief Adeola was quiet for a long moment. "Doctor, I've known Amara Okafor since she was a young woman taking over her father's struggling business. She's like a daughter to me. I would consider it a personal favor if you would keep me informed of any significant decisions regarding her care, particularly if there are plans to move her anywhere." "Of course, Chief." When Chief Adeola entered the room alone, he approached the bed slowly, his walking stick tapping against the tile floor. He pulled a chair close and sat down with a heavy sigh. "Amara, my dear child," he said softly, "I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm going to speak plainly because that's what your father would have wanted." He paused, and Amara could hear him shifting in his chair. "Something is wrong. I can feel it in my bones, the same way I felt it when your father's partners tried to push him out of his own company 40 years ago. There are whispers in the boardroom, questions about succession, about leadership. Your husband has been making inquiries, very careful inquiries, about the company's assets, about voting procedures for board decisions." Chief Adeola's hand found hers, his grip firm despite his age. "Marcus came to see me privately yesterday. He's concerned about some irregularities in the power of attorney documents Chike presented. The signatures look correct, but the witnesses listed, Marcus can't verify them. One of them is supposedly a woman named Joy Adebayo, but there's no Joy Adebayo registered as a notary in Lagos. Marcus has asked me to quietly investigate." Amara's mind raced. Forgery. Chike had forged the power of attorney documents. That was bold and stupid. It also meant that everything he'd planned could unravel if the forgery was discovered. He'd be desperate to move quickly now, before anyone looked too closely. "I'm going to help Marcus dig deeper," Chief Adeola continued. "But I wanted you to know that you're not alone. Whatever is happening here, whatever led to your accident, there are people watching, people who care about you and about protecting your legacy. You just focus on getting better. We'll handle the rest." After he left, Amara felt a surge of hope. Marcus and Chief Adeola were asking the right questions. But they were also putting themselves at risk. If Chike realized they were investigating him, if he felt cornered, there was no telling what he might do. That night, very late, when the hospital corridors were quiet and the night shift nurses were making their rounds on other floors, Amara heard her door open quietly. She tensed, listening. The footsteps were light, feminine. Not Chike. Not Zainab. Someone else. The smell hit her first. Expensive perfume, distinctive and cloying. The woman from the New Year's party. Catchy. "So this is the great Amara Okafor," a voice said softly, dripping with contempt. "The Iron Queen of Lagos, lying here helpless as a baby. How the mighty have fallen." Amara kept her breathing steady, her face relaxed, even as every muscle in her body screamed to open her eyes and confront this woman who'd stolen her husband and plotted her death. "I almost feel sorry for you," Nkechi continued, circling the bed slowly. "You worked so hard, sacrificed so much, built this empire with your own hands. And for what? So that I can step into your life and enjoy everything you created? Chike says you were always too focused on business to appreciate what you had. Too busy to notice when your husband started looking elsewhere for affection. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I met him 2 years ago at a tech conference in Accra. He was so charming, so ambitious, so frustrated with being Mr. Amara Okafor instead of someone in his own right. We understood each other immediately. And when he told me about his plan, when he showed me projections of what Okafor Industries would be worth in 5 years, I knew I'd found my perfect partner. 2 years. They'd been planning this for 2 years while Amara had been completely oblivious, working 18-hour days, traveling across the continent, building and expanding and never once suspecting that her home life was a carefully constructed lie. The accident was supposed to be cleaner, Nkechi said, her tone almost regretful. Quick, final, no complications. But you survived, which means we have to be more patient. Chike says patience is key. Move you to Switzerland, let you fade away quietly where your sister can't interfere. I wanted something faster, but he says we can't risk suspicion. She moved closer to the bed, and Amara could feel her presence looming over her. You know what the beautiful part is? Everyone will feel so sorry for Chike. The devoted husband who stayed by your side, who made the difficult decision to let you go when there was no hope left. They'll admire his strength. And when enough time has passed, when he marries me, they'll say he deserves happiness after such tragedy. It's perfect. Nkechi's hand touched Amara's face, a mockery of gentleness. Sleep well, Amar. Enjoy these last days of your life, whatever awareness you have left. Because soon, very soon, everything you built will belong to us. The door opened again, and Nkechi gasped softly. What are you doing here? It was Chike's voice, sharp with alarm. I wanted to see her, Nkechi said defensively. See the woman whose life I'm taking. That's foolish and dangerous, Chike hissed. If anyone saw you come in here at this hour, if the nurses talk, we need to be careful. You're too paranoid. She's unconscious. She can't hear anything. We don't know that for certain. The doctors say she might have some awareness. You can't come here again, do you understand? Not until after everything is settled. They argued in whispers for another minute before leaving together. Amara waited until their footsteps faded completely before allowing herself to exhale slowly. She had everything she needed now. Confessions, timelines, motivations. But confessions whispered to an unconscious woman wouldn't hold up in court. She needed more. She needed witnesses, recordings, concrete evidence that couldn't be denied or explained away. The next morning, when Zainab arrived for her daily visit, Amara made her decision. It was time to start waking up, carefully and strategically. It was time to turn the tables on the people who thought they'd already won. As Zainab sat down and took her hand, Amara opened her eyes. Just a crack, just enough. Her sister's gasp of joy echoed through the room, and Amara Okafor began the final phase of her plan. The next 72 hours were carefully orchestrated chaos. Amara emerged from her supposed coma in stages, playing the role of a confused, disoriented patient struggling to piece together fragmented memories. She allowed the doctors to run their tests, answered their questions with deliberate vagueness, and watched everyone around her with the sharp focus of a predator assessing its prey. Chike was there constantly those first days, the picture of relief and devotion. He held her hand, brought her flowers, spoke to her in gentle tones about how worried he'd been, how grateful he was that she'd survived. Every word was a performance, and Amara matched it with her own act of a weakened wife grateful for her husband's support. But when they were alone, truly alone, she watched his eyes. She saw the calculation behind the concern, the way he studied her responses, measuring how much she remembered, how much she knew. He was assessing the damage, determining whether his plan could still proceed or whether he needed to adjust course. Do you remember the accident? He asked on the second day of her consciousness, his tone carefully casual. Amara furrowed her brow, as if trying to recall. I was driving. It was raining. The brakes. She paused, letting confusion cloud her features. They didn't work. I couldn't stop the car. She watched his face carefully. Relief flickered across his features, quickly masked. He thought she believed it was truly an accident, that she suspected nothing. The police said it was brake failure, Chaik said softly, stroking her hand. A terrible mechanical malfunction. These things happen even with expensive cars. You're lucky to be alive. Lucky, Amara repeated, the word tasting like poison in her mouth. Dr. Adeyemi was cautiously optimistic about her recovery but insisted she remain in the hospital for at least another week for observation. Amara didn't argue. The hospital was neutral territory, a place where Chaik couldn't control everything, where there were witnesses and security cameras and people who would notice if anything happened to her. On the third day of her waking, Zainab came alone during her lunch break, and Amara knew it was time to make her move. As soon as her sister sat down, Amara reached for her hand and squeezed it hard, her eyes sharp and clear. I need you to listen very carefully, Amara whispered, her voice low and urgent. And I need you to trust me completely. Zainab's eyes widened. What is it? Are you okay? I've been awake for almost 2 weeks, Amara said quietly, watching the door. I woke up 3 days after the accident. I heard everything. Her sister's face went pale. What do you mean, everything? Chaik tried to kill me. The brake failure wasn't an accident. He sabotaged my car, and when I survived, he planned to move me to Switzerland and let me die there. He's been plotting with another woman, someone named Nkechi, to take over my company and my life. Zainab's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears of shock and rage. Oh God, Amar. I knew something was wrong. I've been investigating, but I had no proof. I know. Chief Adeola told me about your concerns when he visited. I heard everything while I was pretending to be unconscious. We need to go to the police right now, Zainab said, starting to rise. No. Amara gripped her sister's wrist, pulling her back down. Not yet. We need evidence that will hold up in court, not just my word against his. He's already forged power of attorney documents. He'll claim I'm confused from the head injury, that the medication is affecting my memory. We need to catch him in the act, get him to confess on record. Zainab took a shaky breath, her prosecutor's mind already working through the legal angles. What do you need me to do? First, I need you to get me a phone. Not my regular phone, something he can't trace. Something I can hide here in the hospital. Second, I need you to work with Marcus and Chief Adeola. Tell them I'm awake and aware, but keep it between the three of you. No one else can know. What about the medical staff? Dr. Adeyemi suspects something, I think, but we'll keep up the act of slow recovery for now. The longer Chaik thinks I'm confused and vulnerable, the more careless he'll become. Zainab nodded, wiping her eyes. What else? Find out everything you can about Nkechi. Full name, background, how she knows Chaik, what her role is in all this. And get me the contact information for our old legal team at Adebayo and Associates. If Chaik switched lawyers without my real consent, then any document signed under that arrangement might be invalid. I'm on it, Zainab said fiercely. But Amara, you need to be careful. If he suspects if he thinks you're a threat. He already tried to kill me once, Amara said coldly. But he failed. And I'm not going to give him a second chance. This time, I'm the one in control. After Zainab left, Amara lay back against the pillows, her mind working through the next steps. She needed Chaik to reveal himself completely, to make a mistake so obvious that even his expensive lawyers couldn't explain it away. She needed him to feel confident, to think his plan was still working. That evening, when Chaik arrived for his daily visit, Amara put on her best performance yet. I've been thinking about the company, she said weakly, as if the effort of concentration exhausted her. There are deals pending, decisions that need to be made. I can't manage everything from a hospital bed. She saw the flash of interest in his eyes, quickly concealed behind concern. Don't worry about work right now, Chaik said smoothly. You need to focus on recovery. The company will be fine. But the Ghana expansion, the partnership with the South African mining company, I worked so hard on those deals. She let her voice crack slightly, adding a tremor of distress. I can handle it, Chaik said, leaning forward. I've been consulting with Marcus, learning the details of your major projects. If you give me the authority to make decisions on your behalf, just temporarily until you're stronger, I can keep everything running smoothly. There was the trap revealing itself. He wanted her to voluntarily sign over control, to legitimize his power grab with her own consent while she was supposedly vulnerable and confused. "Would you do that for me?" Amara asked, her voice small and grateful. "I trust you completely, Chike. You've always supported my work." "Of course," he said, and she could hear the triumph underlying his gentle tone. "I'll have the lawyers draw up temporary authorization papers. Nothing permanent, just enough to keep the business running until you're back on your feet." "Thank you," Amara whispered, closing her eyes as if exhausted. "I don't know what I'd do without you." After he left, she allowed herself a cold smile. He'd taken the bait. Now she just needed to reel him in carefully, let him think he was winning right up until the moment she destroyed him. The phone Zainab smuggled to her the next day was a basic smartphone, untraceable and loaded with a secure recording app. Amara hid it under her mattress, waiting for the right moment to use it. That moment came 2 days later when she overheard Chike on a call outside her room, his voice low but audible through the partially open door. "The documents will be ready tomorrow. Once she signs them, we'll have full control within 48 hours. Then we can accelerate the timeline. I'm thinking another accident, something that happens after she's released from the hospital. A fall down the stairs at home, perhaps. Head injuries are so unpredictable, and she's already fragile from the first accident." Amara's hand moved silently to the phone hidden beneath her pillow. She activated the recording app just as Chike continued. "No, Nkechi, listen to me. This has to look natural. The first accident raised some questions with her sister. We can't afford suspicion. But once the company assets are legally under my control, once the new will is in place, even if questions arise later, it won't matter. The law will be on our side." He paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. "I don't care if you're impatient. We've waited 2 years. We can wait a few more weeks to do this right. The payout is $3 billion. That's worth being patient for." The phone recorded every word, every callous calculation, every admission of murder conspiracy. When Chike finally ended the call and returned to her room, Amara was lying still with her eyes closed, the phone safely hidden, and evidence of his guilt stored in digital form. She had him now. But she needed one more piece, one final confession that would seal his fate completely. And she knew exactly how to get it. On the 15th day after the accident, Dr. Adeyemi cleared Amara for discharge with strict instructions for rest and follow-up appointments. Chike was delighted, playing the role of the devoted husband preparing to bring his wife home. But Amara had other plans, plans that required her to be in her own territory, surrounded by the tools and resources she'd built over 2 decades. The Okafor estate in Ikoyi sprawled across 5 acres of prime Lagos real estate, a modern architectural masterpiece of glass, stone, and carefully manicured gardens. As Chike drove through the security gates, Amara looked at the house she'd designed, the home she'd thought was a sanctuary, and saw it now for what it truly was, the stage for the final act of her carefully orchestrated revenge. The household staff greeted her with genuine emotion. Her head housekeeper, Mrs. Adeyemi, had tears in her eyes as she helped Amara from the car. The security chief, Ibrahim, a former military officer who'd been with her for 10 years, watched Chike with an expression Amara recognized, distrust carefully concealed behind professional courtesy. "Welcome home, madam," Ibrahim said quietly, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that suggested he knew more than he was saying. "We've kept everything exactly as you left it." "Thank you, Ibrahim," Amara replied, and she saw the slight nod he gave her, an acknowledgement that passed between them. Ibrahim was ex-intelligence. He noticed things. And he was loyal to her, not to Chike. That first night home, Amara played her role perfectly. She moved slowly, claimed exhaustion, and retired to the master bedroom early. Chike fussed over her, brought her tea, adjusted her pillows, and suggested she take the sleeping medication Dr. Adeyemi had prescribed. "You need proper rest," he said solicitously. "No thinking about work, no stress. Just healing." Amara took the pill he offered, placed it under her tongue, and swallowed water while keeping the medication hidden. As soon as Chike left the room, she spat the pill into a tissue. She couldn't afford to be drugged, not now, not when she was so close to the truth. Around midnight, She heard voices downstairs. Moving silently, Amara crept to the top of the staircase and looked down into the foyer. Chike was there with a woman, the same woman whose perfume she'd smelled in the hospital. Finally, she could see her enemy's face. Nkechi Okonkwo was beautiful in a sharp, calculating way. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and her long braids were adorned with golden thread. She moved through Amara's home with the confidence of someone who already considered it her own. "She's asleep?" Nkechi asked, her voice carrying up the stairs. "Heavily medicated," Chike confirmed. "She won't wake up for hours." Amara pulled out the phone Zainab had given her and began recording, her hands steady despite the fury burning in her chest. "Good," Nkechi said, walking into the living room. Amara moved silently along the upstairs hallway to the railing that overlooked the space, positioning herself where she could see and hear everything while remaining hidden in the shadows. "I brought the papers for her to sign tomorrow," Chike said, pulling out documents from a folder. "Once these are executed, I'll have complete control of the company. Marcus and the board won't be able to block me." "What about Chief Adeola?" Nkechi asked. "I heard he's been asking questions." "Chief Adeola is old and sentimental. He has one vote on the board. The others will fall in line once they see the legal documents. And if they don't, well, there are ways to pressure board members. Everyone has something to hide." Nkechi laughed, pouring herself a glass of wine from Amara's private collection, a vintage Bordeaux that had cost $15,000. "I can't believe how perfectly this worked out. When you first told me about your plan, I thought you were crazy. Killing your wife seemed so risky." "It's not killing," Chike corrected smoothly. "It's removing an obstacle. And it's not like she would have lived forever anyway. I'm just accelerating the timeline." Still, the first accident was brilliant. If she'd died then, everything would have been so much simpler. Chike shrugged, swirling whiskey in a crystal tumbler. "The coma worked in our favor, actually. It gave me time to get everything in order, to position myself properly. And her miraculous recovery will make the second accident even less suspicious. Everyone will think she just wasn't as healed as the doctors believed." Amara's phone captured every word, every casual discussion of her murder, every detail of their conspiracy. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing remained controlled. This was business now, and business was what she did best. "When will it happen?" Nkechi asked, settling onto the sofa, Amara's sofa, with the ease of someone who belonged there. "This week. I'm thinking Friday night. We'll have dinner together, a romantic evening at home. The staff will have the night off, as usual for Fridays. I'll suggest we sit on the upstairs balcony, enjoy the view. The railing is already loose, I made sure of that this afternoon. One push and she'll fall 3 stories onto the stone patio below." Tragic accident. The grieving widow, still weak from her car crash, lost her balance. "You've thought of everything," Nkechi purred, moving closer to him. "That's why I love you. You're not like other men, content to live in someone else's shadow. You take what you deserve." They kissed, there in Amara's living room, celebrating her planned murder like it was a business achievement. Amara recorded it all, her face a mask of ice, her heart beating with cold fury. But she'd heard enough. She had everything she needed: motive, method, timeline, and most importantly, confession. It was time to end this. Silently, Amara moved back to the bedroom and sent a text to Zainab on the secure phone. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., bring everyone. It's time." The next morning, Amara appeared at breakfast looking pale and weak, exactly as Chike expected. He was solicitous, offering to feed her, suggesting she rest more, playing the concerned husband to perfection. "I need to go to the office this afternoon," he said casually. "Just for a few hours. There are some documents that need my signature. Will you be all right here alone?" "Of course," Amara said softly. "Mrs. Adeyemi will be here. I'll just rest." As soon as Chike left, Amara transformed. She showered, dressed in one of her power suits, a crimson aquaprint blazer with matching trousers that she'd worn when she'd closed her biggest deal. She applied makeup carefully, covering the remaining bruises, and styled her hair. When she looked in the mirror, the Iron Queen of Lagos looked back at her. At 2 o'clock precisely, they began to arrive. Zainab came first, followed by Chief Adeola, Marcus Obi, and 3 other senior board members who'd been quietly briefed. Ibrahim let them in through the service entrance, and they gathered in Amara's private study, the one room in the house that Chaik rarely entered. Amara stood before them, no longer the wounded victim but the CEO who'd built an empire. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I know you have questions. I'm going to answer all of them. But first, I need you to listen to something." She played the recordings, all of them. Chaik's phone calls from the hospital, Nkechi's late-night visit, and finally, the conversation from the previous night detailing the planned murder. The room fell silent as the evidence unfolded, each confession more damning than the last. When the recordings ended, Chief Adila's face was gray with shock. Marcus looked murderous. Zainab was crying silent tears of rage and relief. "How long have you known?" Chief Adeola asked quietly. "Since the day I woke up in the hospital," Amara replied. "I've been playing dead, gathering evidence, waiting for them to reveal everything. And now they have." "We need to contact the police immediately," Zainab said, already reaching for her phone. "Already done," Amara confirmed. "I called my contact at the Criminal Investigation Division this morning. They're standing by, waiting for my signal. But before we bring them in, I need to know, is the company secure? Can Chaik do any damage with the forged documents he has?" Marcus shook his head. "The forgery has been confirmed. I have an affidavit from the real notary proving the power of attorney is fake. And I've already filed an injunction preventing any transfer of corporate assets. Even if he tried to execute those documents, they'd be worthless." "Then we're ready," Amara said. She looked at each person in the room, these people who'd stood by her, who'd believed in her even when she appeared to be gone. "Thank you for your loyalty. Thank you for not giving up on me." "Your family," Chief Adeola said simply. "We protect family." Amara picked up her phone and made the call. "Inspector Adewale? This is Amara Okafor. You can come now. I have everything you need." Within 30 minutes, police vehicles surrounded the estate. Chaik arrived home to find his wife very much alive and alert, standing in the foyer flanked by police officers and lawyers. The look on his face when he truly saw her for the first time since the accident, standing strong and aware and clearly in control, was worth every moment of the deception she'd endured. "Hello, husband," Amara said coldly. "We need to talk." The color drained from Chaik's face as he stood frozen in the doorway, his briefcase slipping from his fingers and hitting the marble floor with a sharp crack. Behind him, the late afternoon sun cast his shadow long across the foyer, a dark silhouette that seemed to shrink as reality closed in around him. "Amara," he breathed, his eyes darting from her face to the police officers, to the assembled board members, and back again. "You're awake. The better." "I've been awake for quite some time," Amara said, her voice steady and cold as steel. "In fact, I woke up 3 days after the accident. I heard everything, Chaik. Every phone call. Every whispered conversation. Every plan you made to kill me and steal everything I built." Inspector Adewale, a tall man in his 50s with gray at his temples and the bearing of someone who'd seen too much human darkness, stepped forward. "Mr. Okafor, I'm Inspector Adewale from the Criminal Investigation Division. We need you to come with us for questioning regarding the attempted murder of your wife and conspiracy to commit fraud." "This is insane," Chaik said, but his voice lacked conviction. His eyes kept returning to Amara, searching her face for weakness, for the confusion and vulnerability he'd counted on. He found none. "Amara, whatever you think happened, you're confused. The head injury, the trauma, you're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years," Amara replied. She nodded to Zainab, who held up a tablet. "Would you like to hear yourself plotting my murder? We have recordings. Multiple recordings. You discussing brake failure. You and Nkechi planning the balcony accident for this Friday. You admitting that you've been planning this for 2 years." Chaik's face went from pale to gray. "You can't record people without their consent. That's illegal." "Actually," Zainab said, her prosecutor's voice cutting through his desperate deflection, Under Nigerian law, one-party consent is sufficient for recording conversations when there's reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. And considering you were planning to murder my sister, I'd say that qualifies. The study door opened, and 2 more officers entered, escorting Nkechi Okonkwo between them. She was in handcuffs, her designer dress rumpled, her perfectly styled braids disheveled. When she saw Chike, her eyes widened in panic. "You said she was sedated," Nkechi hissed at him. "You said she didn't know anything." "Shut up," Chike snapped, but it was too late. "Ms. Okonkwo has been very cooperative," Inspector Adewale said dryly. "She's already confirmed several details about the conspiracy, including her role in helping you forge the power of attorney documents and her knowledge of the planned accidents." Chike's shoulders slumped. The mask he'd worn for so long, the devoted husband, the supportive partner, finally cracked and fell away. What remained was something smaller, something bitter and resentful. "You don't understand what it's like," he said quietly, looking at Amara with something that might have been hatred or might have been pain. "Living in your shadow. Being introduced as Amara Okafor's husband, never as Chike Okafor, businessman in my own right. Watching you sign deals worth millions while I was expected to smile and applaud and be grateful for the crumbs of attention you threw my way." "So you decided to kill me," Amara said flatly. "That was your solution to feeling inadequate? Not therapy. Not honest conversation. Not divorce. Murder." "I earned this," Chike said, his voice rising with desperate anger. "I supported you for 12 years. I stood by you through everything. That company should be half mine. Those billions should be half mine. I deserved more than being your accessory." "You deserved exactly what you contributed," Chief Adeola said, his voice heavy with disgust. "Which was nothing but lies and betrayal. Amara built that empire with her own brilliance and hard work. You were given everything, a home, a lifestyle, respect by association. And you repaid her by trying to take her life." Marcus stepped forward, holding a folder. "For what it's worth, we've already begun asset protection proceedings. The forged documents have been nullified. The board has voted unanimously to block any claims you might make on the company. And Mrs. Okafor's legal team is preparing a civil suit for everything you've done." "Mr. Okafor," Inspector Adewale said firmly, "we need you to come with us now." As the officers moved to arrest him, Chike looked at Amara one last time. "I loved you once," he said quietly. "In the beginning, before the money and the power changed everything. I really did love you." "No," Amara said, her voice cracking for the first time since the confrontation began. "You loved what you thought I could give you. You never loved me. If you had, you would have talked to me instead of trying to kill me. You would have been honest instead of plotting with your mistress in my own home." She stepped closer, looking into the eyes of the man she'd shared her life with, the man she trusted above all others. "I would have given you a fair divorce, Chike. I would have been generous in the settlement because despite everything, we did have good years together. But you chose greed and violence over honesty. You chose murder over conversation. And now you'll spend the rest of your life paying for that choice." The officers handcuffed him and led him toward the door. Nkechi was already being escorted to a separate police vehicle. As they passed each other, Chike looked at her with such venom that she flinched. "This is your fault," he snarled at Nkechi. "You and your impatience, your greed. If you just waited like I said." "Like you said?" Nkechi shot back, her composure finally shattering. "This whole plan was yours. You came to me with this. You said it would be easy, that she would never know, that we'd be rich and happy. You lied to me just like you lied to her." Inspector Adewale separated them with a look of professional weariness. "Save it for your lawyers. You're both going to need very good ones." As the police vehicles pulled away from the estate, Amara stood in the foyer surrounded by the people who'd stood by her, Zainab, Chief Adeola, Marcus, the board members, and Ibrahim, who'd quietly secured the house and protected her throughout the entire ordeal. "It's over," Zainab said, putting an arm around her sister. "You're safe now." "Is it over?" Amara asked quietly. "Or is this just the beginning of something else?" Chief Adeola approached, his weathered hand gentle on her shoulder. "The legal battles will take time. Chaik will try to fight the charges. Nkechi will try to make deals. There will be publicity, gossip, people talking about your private pain in public forums. But you're alive, Amara. You survived, and you were smart enough to gather the evidence that will convict them. That's what matters. Marcus cleared his throat. The company is secure. I've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow to address any concerns and reaffirm your leadership. The stock price might take a hit when the news breaks, but we'll recover. We always do. Amara nodded, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the confrontation was fading, leaving behind the weight of betrayal and the physical toll of her injuries. I want to make a statement, she said suddenly. To the press, to our employees, to everyone who's about to hear a twisted version of this story. I want them to hear the truth from me. Are you sure? Zainab asked. You don't have to face the cameras right now. You could rest, recover, let the lawyers handle it. No, Amara said firmly. I've spent 2 weeks playing weak and helpless. I'm done hiding. People need to see that I'm alive, that I'm in control, that Okafor Industries is stronger than ever. Weakness invites more attacks. Strength prevents them. The press conference was held 2 days later in the grand ballroom of the Okafor Industries headquarters. Cameras from every major Nigerian news outlet lined the back wall. Journalists filled the seats, their phones ready to broadcast every word across social media. The story had already broken. Billionaire's husband arrested for attempted murder. But the details were sketchy, the rumors wild, and everyone wanted to hear directly from the woman at the center of the scandal. Amara walked to the podium in a midnight blue suit, her hair pulled back, her bearing regal. The bruises on her face had faded to yellow shadows that makeup could mostly cover. She looked every inch the CEO who'd built an empire. Good afternoon, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the room. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to make a statement, and then I'll take a few questions. She paused, looking directly into the cameras. 2 weeks ago, someone tried to kill me. That someone was my husband of 12 years, a man I trusted with my life, my home, and my heart. He sabotaged my car, planned a second attempt on my life, and conspired with another woman to steal the company I built from nothing. A murmur rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. But he failed, Amara continued, her voice growing stronger. He failed because I survived the first attempt. He failed because I was smart enough to stay silent and gather evidence. He failed because I have people around me, true people, who never stopped believing in me and never stopped protecting this company. And he failed because at the end of the day, you cannot steal what someone has built with their own hands, their own mind, their own will. She gripped the podium, her eyes fierce. Let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks that power and wealth make you vulnerable. They don't. They make you a target, but they also give you the resources to fight back. To the women watching this, especially the women in business, remember, your success is not a weakness. Your achievements are not something to apologize for. And if someone tries to take what you've built, you fight with everything you have. The questions came fast after that, but Amara answered them all with the same unflinching honesty. Yes, her husband would face justice. Yes, she would divorce him and ensure he received nothing from her estate. Yes, Okafor Industries would continue to grow and thrive under her leadership. And yes, she was grateful to be alive. As the weeks passed, the legal machinery ground forward. Chaik and Nkechi were both charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and forgery. The evidence was overwhelming, the recordings damning, and both eventually accepted plea deals rather than face trial. Chaik received 15 years in prison. Nkechi received 10. The divorce was finalized within 3 months, with Chaik receiving nothing. The prenuptial agreement Amara had insisted on 12 years ago, much to Chaik's frustration at the time, protected every asset. Okafor Industries did take a temporary hit in the stock market, but within 6 months, the price had recovered and then exceeded its previous high. Investors, it turned out, admired strength and resilience. The story of the CEO who'd outsmarted her would-be killers became the stuff of business legend. But on quiet nights, alone in the estate she'd once shared with a man who'd wanted her dead, Amara sat in her study and thought about trust and betrayal, about love and greed, about the price of success and the cost of blindness. Mama Efua had been right all along. She'd seen the snake when Amara had seen only her husband. The lesson was brutal but clear. Trust had to be earned continuously, not assumed permanently. And power, real power, came not from wealth or position but from the willingness to see truth, however painful, and act on it without hesitation. 6 months after the arrests, Zainab visited on a Sunday afternoon. They sat in the garden, drinking hibiscus tea and watching the sunset paint the Lagos sky in shades of orange and purple. "Have you heard?" Zainab asked carefully. Chaik tried to file an appeal. "I heard," Amara said calmly. "It won't go anywhere. The evidence is too strong. And Nkechi is claiming she was manipulated, that she was a victim of Chaik's schemes." Amara laughed, a sound without humor. "Let her claim what she wants. The recordings prove otherwise. They were partners in this, equally guilty, equally greedy." Zainab was quiet for a moment, then asked the question she'd been holding back for months. "Do you ever regret it? Not exposing him immediately? Playing dead for so long?" Amara considered this, watching a bird land on the fountain. "No," she said finally. "If I'd revealed myself too soon, if I'd acted on emotion instead of strategy, he might have found a way out. He might have destroyed evidence, bribed officials, spun a story that made me look paranoid or vindictive. By waiting, by gathering irrefutable proof, I ensured justice. That was worth the pain of listening to him plan my death." "You're stronger than I could ever be," Zainab said softly. "No," Amara corrected. "I'm just someone who learned an expensive lesson and made sure it counted. Strength isn't about not feeling pain, sister. It's about using the pain to become wiser." As the sun set completely and darkness claimed the sky, Amara thought about the future. The company was secure. Her health was restored. Her enemies were behind bars. But there were still questions, still loose ends that nagged at her organized mind. The investigation had revealed that Chaik had taken loans against their home, debts Amara knew nothing about. He'd been gambling, it turned out, losing money in bad investments and desperate schemes. The woman Nkechi had connections to an organized crime syndicate in East Africa, connections that were still being investigated. And there were whispers, unconfirmed rumors, that they hadn't been working alone, that there were other players in the conspiracy who'd escaped notice. Inspector Adewale had warned her just last week. "Keep your security tight, Mrs. Okafor. We got the main conspirators, but investigations like this sometimes reveal larger networks. Until we're certain everyone involved is accounted for, stay vigilant." So Amara stayed vigilant. She upgraded her security, vetted her staff more carefully, and kept the lessons of betrayal close to her heart. Trust but verify. Love but protect yourself. Build your empire, but never forget that those closest to you can become your greatest threats. The Iron Queen of Lagos had survived assassination, had turned the tables on her enemies, and had emerged stronger than ever. But she also knew that in the world of power and wealth, there were always more battles ahead, more enemies waiting in the shadows, more tests of her strength and wisdom. And she would be ready for them. Because Amara Okafor had learned the hardest lesson of all. The accident that nearly killed her wasn't an accident at all. It was a declaration of war. And in war, you either emerge victorious or you don't emerge at all. She had chosen victory. And she would choose it again and again, for as long as necessary. The story of betrayal was over. But the story of resilience, of rebuilding, and of the woman who refused to be destroyed? That story was just beginning. In the master bedroom that night, Amara stood before the mirror and looked at herself, truly looked. The physical scars from the accident were fading, but the internal scars, the knowledge of how close she'd come to death, of how completely she'd been deceived, those would remain. But they would make her sharper, wiser, stronger. Tomorrow, she would announce the expansion into 3 new African markets. Next month, she would launch a foundation supporting women entrepreneurs. Next year, she would double the size of Okafor Industries. And somewhere in a maximum security prison, Chaik Okafor would watch it all unfold, knowing that the empire he'd tried to steal was now forever beyond his reach. Justice, Amara thought, wasn't just about punishment. It was about proving that evil doesn't win, that betrayal doesn't pay, that the strong survive and the wicked fall. She had proven all of that and more. And yet, as she turned off the lights and settled into bed, one question remained, one shadow that the investigation hadn't fully illuminated. Who else had known? Who else had been involved? And were they still out there, watching, waiting, planning their next move? The answer to those questions would have to wait for another day, another investigation, another battle. But whatever came next, Amara Okafor would face it the same way she'd faced everything else, with intelligence, courage, and the unshakable certainty that she would not be defeated. The accident had been meant to end her story. Instead, it had simply begun a new chapter, one where the victim became the victor, and the hunted became the hunter. And this chapter was far from over. Moral of the story: trust is a privilege that must be continuously earned, not a right that can be assumed. Success and power attract both genuine loyalty and hidden envy. The strongest protection against betrayal is not walls or wealth, but wisdom, vigilance, and the courage to see truth even when it breaks your heart. When someone shows you who they really are through their actions, believe them and act accordingly. What happens next? The investigation into Nkechi's criminal connections continues, and whispers suggest there may have been other conspirators who escaped justice. Will Amara discover more enemies within her inner circle? And as she rebuilds her life and her trust, will she ever be able to open her heart again, or has the betrayal changed her forever? What would you have done in Amara's situation? Would you have revealed yourself immediately or waited to gather evidence? Share your thoughts below.